الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم نتعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير اتباع وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصوفي الهني وهب يغني. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين. Alright, we're on the sixth method that's mentioned here in this book. And from the book Muhammad, the Perfect Teacher, and Insight into His Teaching Methods, by Shaykh, the great scholar Abdul Fattah Abu Hudda, who was from Halab, Aleppo, of our modern day Syria. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them complete freedom from what has afflicted them in Syria. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them ease in the near future, inshallah. Right, so number 6. Apalah this tu? What are you all doing? Mama want to ask Bibi. Go kitchen, ask Nanima, ask Bibi. Never mind. We go there better. Because they will attempt to pour themselves. Right. So number 6 method, conversation and rational comparison. Right. So Rasulullah used to engage the Sahaba in conversation, and he also used to use rational comparison, right, with the Sahaba so that they understand things better, right. So here we have 2 hadiths for this chapter, right. One is a very famous hadith, right, about a man, right, who came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asking to be permitted to commit zina, right, and Rasulullah sallallahu responded to him, not just directly saying to him no, right, but trying to rationalize with him, right, so he understood better, right. So he says here, among Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teaching method was to engage in rational cross-questioning. He would pose a question and ask for an answer. He did so to remove falsehood from the heart of the one who considered evil to be good, or to establish the truth in the heart of one who considered the truth to be far-fetched or unlikely. Right, the following are examples of removing falsehood from the heart of one who considered evil to be good. Right, so like sometimes, if you directly tell them, or you directly say to them, this is good, this is wrong, right, if you do it that way, sometimes especially for people who are far from the truth, right, they will just reject it, right. They will not see that, they will not be able to see, right, what is right and what is wrong, unless you bring it to their context, right. So when you bring it to their context and you teach and you give an example with regards to what they understand, right, then they will realize that it is right or it is wrong, right. So almost every law in Islam, right, the right and the wrong, right, can be brought to their context, right, to anybody's context, to let them realize themselves, right, why it is wrong, why is it wrong, and why is it right, right. So hadith number 50, right, Rawa Ahmad wa lafdhu lahu wa Tabarani an Abi Umamah al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu anna fatan shaban أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله ائذن لي بالزنا فأقبل القوم عليه فزجروه وقالوا مه فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم أدنه فدنا منه قريبا فجلس فقال صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم له أتحبه لأمك؟ قال لا والله يا رسول الله جعلني الله فداك. قال ولا الناس يحبونه لأمهاتهم؟ قال أفتحبه لابنتك؟ قال لا والله يا رسول الله جعلني الله فداك. قال ولا الناس يحبونه لبناتهم؟ قال أفتحبه لأختك؟ قال والله لا والله يا رسول الله جعلني الله فداك. قال ولا الناس يحبونه لأخواتهم؟ قال أفتحبه لعمتك؟ قال لا والله يا رسول الله جعلني الله فداك قال ولا الناس يحبونه لعماتهم قال أفتحبه لخالتك قال لا والله يا رسول الله جعلني الله فداك قال ولا الناس يحبونه لخالاتهم فوضع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يده عليه وقال اللهم اغفر ذنبه وطهر قلبه وحسن فرجه قال فلم يكن الفتى بعد ذلك يلتفت إلى شيء. تمام. Alright, so from Ahmad and At-Tabarani, narrate on the authority of Abu Umama al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, who said, a young man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, permit me to commit zina. Right, so zina is adultery or fornication depending on whether the person is married. Right, so permit to commit zina. The people who were present turned to him and rebuked him and said, keep quiet, keep quiet. You know, what kind of question is that? You know very well that zina is haram in Islam. Right, so they keep quiet, and mah means, you know, like keep quiet, you know, shut up, keep quiet, don't say these kind of questions. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he understood this man. I understood that the man actually had sincerely come, right, because this man obviously has an issue with zina. Right, he really has a big issue, right, with staying away from zina. Right, so Rasulullah saw that to tell him that it is haram is not enough. It will not suffice him. Right, you need to actually bring him into a rational thinking, right, about the prohibition. So he said, bring him closer, right, bring him nearer to me. So he went close to Rasulullah and sat down. And Rasulullah said to him, would you like it for your mother? And would you like someone to commit adultery with your mother? And he said, no, I swear by Allah, Ya Rasulullah, may Allah ransom me for your sake. That's the way they will speak. Right? So never, I would never like it, you know, for my mother. And Rasulullah said, and the people do not like it for their mothers. Right? And then he said, we like it for your daughter. And the same thing said, no, never, Ya Rasulullah, I swear by Allah, may Allah ransom me for your sake. And Rasulullah said, and the people would not like it for their daughters. And he says, would you like it for your sister? And he said, no, I swear by Allah, Ya Rasulullah, may Allah ransom me for your sake. And Rasulullah said, and the people will not like it for their sisters. And then he said, we like it for your parental aunt, you know, your amma, your paternal aunt. Right? And then he said, no, I swear, Ya Rasulullah, may Allah ransom me for your sake. No, he will never like that. And Rasulullah said, and people will not like it for their paternal aunts. Then he said, we like it for your maternal aunt. And he said, no, I swear by Allah, Ya Rasulullah, may Allah ransom me for your sake. And Rasulullah said, and people will not like it for their maternal aunt. And so we see here how Rasulullah went through every female family member of this man, right, so that he understood, right, that as you do to others, if you're doing it to a woman, this woman is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's aunt, right, is a family member of someone else. So when you do it to people's woman folk, right, they won't like it, and as much as you don't like it. So Rasulullah then he placed his hand on him and said, O Allah, forgive his sin, purify his heart, protect his private part. And the narrator says the young man was never distracted again thereafter. That means he never looked towards zina ever again. Right? He was the furthest person from zina after that. Right? And here there's a secret from Rasulullah whereby he placed his hands on people. So when they place their hands on the heart of people and they make dua, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the blessed hands of Rasulullah, Allah answer his dua, right, and remove from the man whatever disease that was plaguing his heart. So he says here, consider how Rasulullah completely uprooted the young man's inclination towards adultery by way of dialogue. Right? So just to make him understand, psychological cross-questioning and rational comparison. Rasulullah did all this without quoting any of the verses with regard to the prohibition of adultery and the warnings of punishment that have been issued against an adulterer and adulteress. He did so at this particular time because he knew that this approach would be most effective in removing the evil from the heart of the young man in accordance with his particular perception and understanding. Right? So he saw that, and sometimes for some people also specifically, right, they know all the laws already. They know the haram, the halal, they know the laws in the Quran, the hadith and whatsoever, but they still do it. So sometimes the best way, right, to approach them is rational reasoning, right, with these people. Right? In this, there is a lesson for those who are engaged in propagation to resort to the intellect at times, and with some people, if the situation demands, as was the case with this young man, whose heart Rasulullah cleansed of adultery through rational cross-questioning. The following is an example of establishing the truth in the heart of one who considered the truth to be far-fetched or unlikely. There's the next hadith. Right, so to just reflect on this hadith a bit, right? So some of the laws of Islam we will go by rational thought, right? So like and the reason and the way we go by rational thought is we go by rational thought in a way whereby it cannot be rebuted, right? So sometimes people take rational thought, right, but it can be rebuted. Right, so like people who would, whatever they say like for example, right, when they say that the hijab is for modesty, right, they try to go by rational thought, it's for modesty. So people rebuke them by saying that, I can still be modest without covering my hair. Right, they might say that, I can wear a cap, uncovering my neck is not immodesty or whatever. People try to argue with it. Right, so for some laws in Islam, right, it is best that you go by the law itself. That's the law. Right, so without trying to rationalize, unless you can get a foolproof rationalization, like how Rasulullah did in this situation, right? Because he can't argue, right? He can't argue that, yes, I don't mind my mom doing it, that kind of thing. No, he won't argue Rasulullah. So sometimes rational thought or rationalizing is effective, and sometimes it can actually backfire, right? Whereby people will say, no, it is achieved through other means, that kind of thing, right? So then you don't have a case lah against it. Right? But this kind of thing, the way Rasulullah did it, there was no argument, right, against what Rasulullah said. Right? So like for example, but things that are outrightly wrong lah. Right? So things that when your child takes someone else's things, right? Then you rationalize, will you like it that someone else did that to you? Right? And you will say, like for example, their most favorite thing is someone else took it. Will you like it? Like this belongs to someone else, and maybe it could be her favorite thing. Right, so this is rationalizing that, with them, that why what they're doing is not right, right? Because they would not like it for someone else to do it onto them. Right, there's one of the teaching methods of Rasulullah. Right, that is on a negative part, right, to prevent people from doing what is wrong. Right, here the next hadith in the same method, right, is on the positive side. Right, so hadith number 51. Right, hadith number 51. روى البخاري ومسلم واللفظ للبخاري عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في أضحى أو فطر إلى المصلى. Right, so it's إلى الأضحى أو إلى الفطر إلى المصلى فقال يا معشر النساء تصدقنا. Postman. يا معشر النساء تصدقنا. I think there's someone in the kitchen right now. يا معشر النساء تصدقنا فإني أريتكن أكثر أهل النار. فقلنا وبما يا رسول الله؟ قال تكثرنا اللعن وتكفرنا العشير ما رأيت من ناقضات عقل ودين أذهب للب الرجل الحازم من إحداكن. قلنا وما نقصان ديننا وأقلنا يا رسول الله؟ قال أليس شهادة المرأة مثل نصف شهادة الرجل؟ قلنا بلى. قال فذلك من نقصان عقلها. أليس إذا حاضت لم تصلي ولم تصم؟ قلنا بلى. قال فذلك من نقصان دينها. Right, so Bukhari and Muslim, right, narrated that on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, who said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went out to the musalla for al-Fitr or al-Adha, right, one of the two Eids. Right, he addressed the woman. Saying, "Oh woman, you should give in charity because I was shown the hellfire and saw that you were the majority of the inmates of the hellfire. Right. So here we find in this first part of the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam giving them a way out of the hellfire. Right. So for the strongest way out of the hellfire is to sedekah. Like when you sedekah, you expiate your sins. That means you remove all your sins by giving sedekah, right? Charity. So here is a direct dalil from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereby he told them, do sedekah because you're all committing too many sins, right? And then so the woman, right, alhamdulillah, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the reason? Right, why are we in the fire? Right, what is the thing that women do that causes them to enter into the fire? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, because you curse a lot and you are ungrateful to your husbands. Right, two things. Women curse a lot and they are ungrateful to husbands. Right, whenever Islam speaks about like an entire group of people, it's always understood, right, that there are the minority that don't do this, right, but the majority actually do it. Right, and actually, if you know enough people, you will realize that actually a lot of them do it. Right? A lot of women, they curse their husbands. Right? This curse is specifically towards their husbands or towards other women. Right? Towards other women. Right? I still remember when I was in JC or something. And even in JC, you will find the men and the women, they both curse a lot. Right? When I was in JC, one of my primary school classmates, right? So like long time ago, I don't even know who she is. Right? Primary classmates long time ago. Right, whereby, in primary school, like, she used to compete with me, like, studies, that kind of thing. Right, so I think she met my brother somewhere when I was doing JC, years after primary school, right? Right, so, but I still remember the incident because she met my brother and then she asked my brother, where am I now? Right, and then my brother was like, oh, she's in VJ. Right, and she cursed. Right, she cursed and she was like, VJ, how did she get there? That kind of thing, and then I haven't met her since primary school. She wasn't even a close friend. She wasn't even a close friend. That's one classmate, right? But who used to always compete, lah, right? So like when my brother reported to me, she was like, I met so and so, and then she asked where you were, and then I said VJ, and then she cursed. She cursed, and she was like, how could she? Huh? Yeah, she did. So I didn't say what the curse was. You don't want to know that word. Right, so she cursed. My brother, she cursed. I said, she cursed. Why in the world did she curse? He said, I don't know. She just cursed. Right, that you were there. And actually, you meet enough women that they do that. Right, they curse. Right, they curse very easily. Right, so Allahu Alam. And especially in our time, they curse against their husbands a lot. Right, and they deny the goodness their husband has given them. Right, and because you're ungrateful to your husbands. Right, so like and one of the hadiths, it says that one of the things that causes a lot of women to enter into the hellfire is because when they are angry, they will say to their husband, I've never seen a single goodness from you. Right, whereas the husbands have done a lot of goodness. Right, most husbands, most of them, like, there are those, of course, as we mentioned before, Islam, when they speak about men and women, is about the majority. Right, and then you have the minority, and we have to admit that when it comes to like abuse cases, when it comes to neglect cases, they are indeed the minority. Right, it's not the majority of Muslims are abusive, and the majority of Muslims are neglectful of their families. I mean, the Muslim men. I mean, if that was the case, then that would be a very serious situation. That if our majority of our Muslim men are neglecting their families and are abusive against their women and their families, it's not majority. They do exist, but it's a minority. Right, but people always make it seem like, what about, when we say in Islam that men are such and women are such and such, we mean the majority. Right, that's what it means. Of course, it's always the minority, and even in the Quran, whenever Allah speaks about the Ahlul Bayt, when Allah speaks about the Ahlul Kitab, right, people of the book, it is always with respect to the majority, but there is always the minority. And that's why in Ali Imran, towards Ali Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qualifies what he has to say, or he gives he speaks about the minority, right, here and there. Right, so of course amongst the women that you have the minority who are not like that, but the majority are, and you've met enough women, you will notice that they do curse a lot, right? They don't hold their tongue, right? They are ungrateful. So one of the hadith says, when a woman is angry and she says to her husband, I've never seen a single goodness from you, right? And by that she enters into the fire, right? Because she the husband has toiled, and most husbands, they work very hard. Right, and we know they work very hard. They work the entire day, right, up to the evening. They hardly see their families, and because they hardly see their families, their kids end up not being close to them sometimes, especially when they're growing up, right? So maybe when they're young, they're close, and when they grow up, they stop being close to their fathers because the fathers have to go out and work, right? So it's not even their fault that they actually have to spend a lot of time outside of the house, right? But that is the state of the men lah. Right? Men are like that. That's what will happen to them, right? So the role of the wife, right, is to actually, or the mother, right, is to actually nurture the children in a way whereby they always respect and honor their fathers. Right, so she herself has to show a lot of honor and respect to her father. And as you mentioned by my teacher, Mariam, she said that if any woman disrespects her husband, in any way disrespects her husband, then it will come back to her, and her children will disrespect her. And her children will say to her as how she has said to her own husband. And her children will disobey her as how she has disobeyed her husband. Right? It will come back to her. Right? It will. Right? So, subhanallah. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that kind of state. Right? So it says here, so they say, why are we in the majority in the fire? And he said, you curse a lot and you are ungrateful to your husbands. And she said, I have not seen those of inferior intellects and religion more effective than you in causing a resolute man to lose his intelligence. Right? So what does this mean? Right? So he said, so this is the hadith about a lot of the ulama actually quote, right? That women have lesser intellect and religion, right? With respect to men, lesser. Okay, what does it mean? It does not mean something that we are blamed for. Right? We're not blamed for this. Right? It doesn't mean that we are also It doesn't even mean that we are also inferior in any way. Right? But it just means that it's something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. Right? It's something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, and He will not hold us to account, right? Because He has given you a woman this. Right? So and the woman, alhamdulillah, they asked Rasulullah, what does it mean? What does it mean that we are of lesser intellect and lesser religion? And Rasulullah actually explained thereafter. Right? So, but I'm going to explain this sentence that Rasulullah just said. Right? I have not seen those of inferior intellect and religion more effective than you in causing a resolute man to lose intelligence, meaning that your seductiveness when it comes to men. Right? So that means how women seduce men. Right? So in their seductiveness when it comes to men, right, they even though women are of lesser intellect and religion with respect to men, they're able to cause a man who's supposed to be sound in his mind lose his mind. Right, and fall into what is haram. Right, she's able to do that, and we know many men fall to the temptations of women. Right, even like you would say someone who's religious or pious, or people who are students of knowledge, kind of thing. Right, when it comes to women, right, there is a weakness of men. Right, so men, even though they are married and whatsoever, they can still fall into the clutches of women who seduce. Right, so that's why it will cause them to lose his intelligence, right? Or like sometimes in a house, right, with the husband and the wife, sometimes like she can also cause her husband to make decisions that usually he will not make, right? But because to please her or because she's upset or whatever, right? All of us, these are all generalizations. I know they are generalizations, right? And that's what they are lah, generalizations, right? So there's always the exception to the rule. Right, there's always exception to the rule, but the majority of them are that way, right, in a way. Right. So the woman, they want to ask, right, and they're asking sincerely, they're not being defensive about it, right? Unlike our women of our time, if you tell them, that women are deficient in their intellects and their religion, right? People of our time will say in a very defensive manner, like, why do you say that? Where got such thing? How could you say that? Right? But the women of Rasul's time, they had the humility to say, what's the reason for that? Why do you can you explain to us why is there a defect in the intellect? So they said, Ya Rasulullah. So they said, what is a defect in an inferiority in our intellect and religion, Ya Rasulullah? He replied, is not a testimony of a woman equal to half testimony of a man? They replied, indeed. Right. So Rasulullah said, that is the inferiority of her intellect. Right, the testimony of a woman is half testimony of a man, meaning that if you find a testimony, right, so one man, if you can't find a man, then you find two women, and two women take the place of one man in testimony, in witnessing. Right, why is that so? Allahu Alam, Allah knows best. Right, but it has been mentioned, right, if you want to go by scientific proofs, right, it has been mentioned that actually a lot of women, they do have, when it comes to logical thinking, right, a lot of women, they struggle with logical thinking because they're always they're more influenced by their emotions, right, than by their logical thinking, which is why, and Allah knows best, and this is just my own readings, about this issue, about because people have issues about the woman having two witnessing, two women must witness instead of one, Actually, to me, it's a good thing that you need two women to witness. Then women will not be called to witness if there's a man around. I mean, I would rather not be called to witness, right? And also that if you called to witness, if two people say different things, then that saves you, right, from the entire thing hinging on what you say, that kind of thing, lah. Right? So I would say that is a good thing, be called to be witness, because of the major sins in Islam is to falsely testify. Right, major sins. There, false testimonies are the major sin. Right, but it has been said, if you read all this stuff about men and women, right, that it is indeed that in the nature of men, and which is why it's not a coincidence that we see many men go into mathematics and physics. Right, it's not a coincidence. Right, why specifically the male gender goes there, right, and then the female gender that they go more towards like the arts and the biological sciences, and of course for each there are the exceptions, right. So what they say is that it is in the genes, right, that men are able to think logically better, right. They're able to they're able to assess logic better. They're able to do like basically mathematical sciences, right, nahu, grammar, that kind of thing. A lot of men actually they actually excel in these things, right? Whereas women, there are those who do and there are those who don't. And the thing about it is that the women who do excel, right, in these areas of mathematics and physics and whatsoever, right, they actually, when they go into genetically, when they are studied genetically, right, they actually have a higher level of testosterone in their bodies. Right, so and then so in a sense, right, there is some sort of gender thing, in their genes that's causing them to be able to analyze that, right. So and you do see that the women who are inclined towards the mathematics and the physics, right, they are more so-called manly in their demeanor, right, than they are feminine. And those who are very feminine, they tend to go towards the other kinds of knowledges, right. Same thing with on the other side. Right, when it comes to like things about the arts and Allahu Alam, Allah knows best lah. right, the softer sciences, like you would say, the softer sciences, not so hardcore logical thinking. You will find a lot of women, they're inclining towards there. Right, a lot of women, and the men who are inclined towards there, they are of the, like, compared to the men who are like under engineering, right, the men who are like in the arts, they're a bit different. Right, you can sense, right? It's not all of them, but you can actually sense there is a difference, right, in their demeanor, right, in the way they carry themselves and everything, right? There is a difference, right? So they're not soft. They're not say that all men they are soft, but the men under engineering, they're different. They're really different compared to the other men on the other side. They seem more like hard, right, in a way. And it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just that they're all different. It's all different, right? So and it is true that when I teach boys and I teach girls, right, you do find that when you go into more difficult mathematics and sciences, especially physics, you do find the woman not grasping it as fast, right, as the men. Even though you're the same teacher and you explain the same way, right, the men seem to grasp it faster, right, than women. Right, majority, but of course not all. Right, there are those men who don't, right, and those men, they're actually not. It's genetic lah. It's all genetic. It's all in the genes. So Allahu Alam, it could be this, right? That and this is from readings. We don't know exactly. We know why Allah Subhanahu wa Taala caused two women to testify and one man, right? Testify. Right? It is of course said that it is her emotion. She's very emotional, right? And it is true. If you met enough women, women are very emotional, right? Which is why for me, like even though people always argue about talak being on the tongue of men, only men can call talak, women can call talak, right? For me, that just makes so much sense. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what He's doing, but I mean, to me, it makes so much sense because I met so many women who are so emotional. So if talak was on their tongue, they would call talak every single small bit thing happens, and they fly into their emotions. And also women become emotional when they're on their menses, when they're pregnant, when they have like ups and downs of their emotions. Whereas men, they are able to hold, not all men, there are those who are not able to, but then there are like quite a number, I mean the majority of them are able to hold their tongue when it comes to talak. No matter what a woman does, right, they will think very, very, very carefully about it into the future, for the children, for this, for that. They will not call talak. There are those who do, and we have seen them. There are those who do. They don't think so much, and these are different kinds of men. But then there are those who do. They don't act on their emotions, Right? And then women, not all, majority, right? They do act on their emotions, and they walk out of the house. You know, like all kinds of women who like from day one of their marriage, when they get upset, they walk out of the house. You know, that's not a mature thing to do. Right? If you're upset with something with your husband, right, it's for you to either sit down and talk it out, or just let it blow over. Right? And to let it blow over means not to keep it, right, but to just literally let go of it. Let go of whatever has happened. Let go. Right? So I think for me personally, because I speak to so many women, and at the same time, because they're confiding in me, right? These women, they're confiding in me, but you see a lot of the cases is that they are very sensitive, right? And I don't think they realize that. For me, I'm more towards the manly side. Yes, I'm more towards it, and I know very well because I'm engineer, did math, sciences, physics, right? And for me, I like my own ideas. I tend to agree a lot with the men, with how they see things, you know, than to go on to the emotional side of things. So just very, very logically, just perceive things logically. You know, what is the best thing to do, right? So, you know, Allahu Alam. So, but when I speak to women, you do see that a lot of it like is petty. You know, a lot of issues that they will bring up to you and say, my husband did this, my husband did that, my husband did this or that. Like a lot of it, you like, that's actually quite petty. Right? Or like you could just brush it off. I don't hold it. Right? So when like they come to me and they tell me all their issues, and to me macam benda kecil, it's so small, these issues. Right? And then I said, like, you do realize that all the issues you tell me are actually very, very minor issues. Right? And she says, yes, I know they're minor. Right? She says, I know they're minor, but she will say, like, you know, but I've been keeping them for so long, so they become major. And then so my answer to her will be like, then why do you keep them? Right? Why do you keep them? Small issues are meant to be swept away and thrown out by the end of the day. Right? You don't like keep. So he threw the towel on the floor. You keep. Right? He said something to you a long time ago. Slip of his tongue. You keep. Right? Whatever he did, you keep until one day you blew. Right? That's your fault. It's your fault that you kept. Right? You know, the person who is wise, just brush it off and then forget about it. Right? And then you live your life happier. Right? So Allah knows best, right? Why these hadiths are there. But the thing is that it is in our religion. The religion speaks about it. Right? That women have something about their intelligence. There's something in there. It does not mean that she is lesser in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It just means that Allah gave her lesser, right, of intelligence. When it comes to who is better in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it just goes down to your good deeds and your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is a level playing field for men and for women. Right? So to be lesser of intelligence is not demeaning in any way, nor is it insulting in any way, nor does it mean that you're lesser as a person or as a Muslim in any way. It just means that Allah gave you less. Right? When it comes to intelligence, maybe in the logical sense, maybe you have more emotional intelligence, Allahu Alam, right? But in this case, she's lesser. Right? So the same thing like saying someone, no, I'm strong in mathematics, I'm strong in biology, I'm strong in art, I'm strong in dancing, whatsoever. You know, where people have different strengths. So you don't say that someone is cleverer than someone else. Right? You just say she's better in mathematics and he's better in physics and she's better in chemistry and she's better. Right? So it doesn't mean that they're better than everybody else. Right? It is that you happen to have your strength is there and your strength is not elsewhere. Right? Okay, so it says here, yeah, and also on top of that is to mention that when it comes to grammarians, especially in the Arabic language, a lot of it are under the men. Men are really good grammarians when it comes to the Arabic language. I don't know about English, right? But men are very good grammarians, right? Because grammar in Arabic, Nahu, takes a lot of mathematical, logical thinking, right? That women actually struggle with. Right? There are those who do excel, but there are most of them actually struggle with grammar. Right, Arabic grammar, right? So then he says, what about her religion? And he says, when a woman is menstruating, does she not abstain from prayer and fasting? And he said, yes. And they said, indeed. And the Rasul said, that is a defect in her religion, right? So defect in the religion is not on her fault, and she'll not be held to account for it, right? Because on her menses, she does not fast nor pray, right? So in a sense, a defect, in the sense that it's not complete, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can still reward her. Right, based on her own what He has given her. Right, so menses is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for the daughters of Adam. right? Menses something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for the daughters of Adam, and it's not their fault if they're not able to fast and pray. Alright. So so this is that chapter, right, on asking and rationalizing things with the questioner. Alright. Okay, number 7, Isa. Yeah, they have less responsibility. They do. They say all the responsibilities on the men. Like, so when it comes to the finances, by right the men should handle. Right? Some men, they put it on their wives. Right? But then for me personally, I don't believe in women handling finances. I personally don't believe it. First, I can do it also for my husband, but I refuse to do it. Right? Because it does make them spoiled in a way. They get spoiled about it. Right? So that for me, for certain things, if he gives me allowance to buy for the house, right, like groceries and whatsoever, you do. That's what you do because you're going to buy for the house. So you put aside the budget for it, right? But then when it comes to when it comes to house, when it comes to trips, holiday, whatsoever, right, I will leave it up to him to handle. He handles everything, right? So because it is his duty to shelter the family. So when it comes to housing payments, he pays, right? When it comes to bills, he pays. When it comes to household things that I need to buy, because I'll go out and buy it, right? Then he gives the allowance. He gives the allowance, right? Because for me, because I saw my mother and my father. My mother does all the finances, right? Which makes my father lax. He becomes lax about it, right? So they just earn the money. You can help. I'm not saying you can't. You can. For me, my way is that I don't. I actually don't. Decision making, at the end of the day, he is the one to decide, because he is the head of the household and he is responsible over what happens to his household. He is responsible, right? So he'll be held to account also on the day of judgment, right? So while he can seek your advice and hear what you have to say, right, the last word goes down to him, right? So where the family goes. So basically, you are assisting him in bringing up his family. And his family is your family, of course. You share together. You have the two you're both the parents of the family, right? But he will be held responsible or accountable for what happens to his family, right? So he can consult her if he wants to, right? But if he chooses to make his own decisions, as far as I've learned in the Sharia, is that it is his family and he decides, right, to do it, right? So for her to basically subject herself to it, right? Just to go on with it. If it's something sinful that he wants to do with the family, right, then she actually, because it's sinful. If it's outrightly sinful, for example, like he wants to have a party and invite whatever stuff that is not permissible in the religion. Maybe on the invite a live band, and sing like all kinds of pop songs or whatsoever, and it's completely impermissible. You can actually, in this case, because it is something that is sinful, you can choose to not take part. It means you say, I will not take part. It means it's just boycott and you can, if it's outrightly sinful, like what he's doing, you say, I will not go. Right? So for example, he wants to bring the entire family to Hollywood and I don't know, Las Vegas, whatever, right? You can say, you know what, I do not want to take part. I will just wait outside. I'll wait somewhere else at a hotel or whatsoever. You can go if you want. I will not go. Right? And then when you're done, you can come back. Right? So she can, because you don't obey the creation with the disobedience of the Creator. Right? So at that point, she can actually pull back. But besides that, if whatever he decides is not haram or it's not haram, right, then she has no right to say what he should or should not do. Right? So that I know of a wife, right, who she got very upset, right, because her husband bought a house, right, but the house that he bought is meant for rental. He didn't buy it to stay there. He was quite happy where they're staying, right? So the house that he bought, it was actually meant for rental, right? And he bought it before he married her. A long time ago he bought it, right? So, but he bought the house, the kind of house whereby they need to be built. That means you buy it when it's on display. Like now you can see some of the condos they have the showroom. You can buy the house already, right? And then every year you pay while the house is being built. Right? When the house is finally built, then you can move in if you want to, right? Or you can rent out if you want to, right? So what happened was that so he bought this house before he got married, right? So then he got married, Right? So while he was married, the house actually got completed. Right? So with the completion of the house, the wife thought, oh, we're going to move there. But then he went to rent it out without even asking her anything. Basically, he just went to rent it out, without saying to her, without asking her, without discussing with her. Right? She got very angry. And she told me about it, and I said to her, whose house is it? Whose house is it? Is it your house or your husband's house? And she said, it's his house. Then I said, then why are you upset? He can do whatever he wants with his property. He can do whatever he wants with his property. Understand that? It's a very wrong notion to say, what's mine is mine, what his is mine. That's a very wrong notion. They always spread this, what is mine, and what is his is mine. That's wrong. Right? He's only responsible to support the family. That's all. If he earns a lot of money, his only obligation is to pay for the house, pay for the food, pay for the amenities in the house, support the family. If he wants to keep all of his wealth to himself and support the family in a reasonable way, he may very well do so. Right? So like my one husband, he sold his own car. He decided to sell his car, right, without asking me anything. Why is his car? I have no say whether he wants to sell his car or not. I actually have no say whatsoever. It's not my car. It's his car. Right? So when she complained to me about this woman, she complained to me that her husband actually rented out his house without asking her anything or consulting with her. And I said he has every right to do so. Of course, it'd be nice, right? It's just nice on his part if he wants to consult you. But perhaps he knew your answer already, which is no. And so maybe he already preempted what's going to be your answer because he knows that you want to move into the house, right? But he has decided, right, that he's not going to move into the house, and he decided that it's more profitable for the family to rent it out. He has decided it's more profitable, and instead to stay where you are at right now, even though it's a lower accommodation, he's still providing for you an accommodation. He has done his nafkah. It's done. Right, so there's a thing about sometimes about women lah, right? That they misunderstand the law, and when they misunderstand the law, they get upset when there's no right for them to misunderstand the law. Right, in a way lah, right? So when it comes to family decisions, it is on the husband, but of course on him to consult his wife, right? It's not compulsory. So woman must understand that it's not compulsory that your husband consults you, right? It's not actually compulsory. He can decide whatever he wants to decide. It's his family, right? And he's the head of the family. He can do whatever he wants to do, right? As long as it's not haram. As long as it's not haram, right? So if he does not, so if he asks the wife to continue working, right, she must ask him why. And if he says to help him out in finances, right, then she must say that you must understand that what I'm doing is to help you out, and it's not compulsory on me. And if I don't want to continue working, I may very well do so. Right, because it's not his right. So in this case, it's come to rights, right. So he needs to understand that he has no right to force her to work. But because she sees that he is struggling, right, in his finances to support the family, from her goodness, and he must also understand that it's from her goodness that she tires herself out, and she goes to work. And so for me, same thing. My husband, same thing. Right, so he would like, it is no. It is no struggle, and he still wants her to work. Then she can say, no, I don't want to. Okay, because it's not his right to make her work. Right, it's not his right to make her work. It's not. This like obedience to husband, there are parameters around it. Right, so obedience with respect to specifically his house, his children, and his rights. Specifically to that. Right, so his house, what is in this house, who enters the house and who leaves the house, and what is in the house itself, like all the things and whatsoever, she must obey him with respect to that. Children, right, so if he says, we're going to bring them up in this way, and it's not haram in Islam to do so, right, she must obey him, right, with the respect of the education and the bringing up of children. When it comes to his rights, so his rights are what? That she does not beautify herself, that she doesn't go out when he's not pleased with her going out. It's his rights. He has a right. That his wife does not show herself before other men. He has a right to do that, right? And of course, his own sexual and physical rights, right? His own needs, right? So when it comes to making the wife work for no reason, right? He has no right. He has no right, right? So that's not part of his rights. Especially if she knows that if she goes out there, the kids will be neglected, right? Or that she will mix around with a lot of men. Right, so in that sense, her going out to work, right, is unnecessary, and it could even border around what is impermissible. Right? So he has no right to force her to work, unless there is problems in the finances and she would like to help him out, and he has to understand that she is helping him out. Right? That it's not her obligation, but she's being kind to him and helping him out, right, with the finances. Right? Like, for me, my husband wants me to do more tuition, but I told him, frankly enough, I'm very tired. I don't want to do tuition. Is the last thing I want to do. So I only do tuition once a week. I don't do more than that. Right? So, and he understands, like, because I'm tired. For him, like, if I can do more tuition, he would like me to do more. Right? But I think that would mean I will teach in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. And then at night I do afak and I teach at night. I'm doing the entire 24 hours. Right? And I teach through the weekends. Right? So if you can give me my evening, without giving tuition, right, then that is what I want to do lah. I don't want to be occupied, right, with tuition. Right? So then he is okay. Then so he works hard. He works harder lah. Right? So he works harder. He goes out there and gets more tuition to do. Right? So he works harder because I want to rest. Okay, it's not on me. It's not on me. Right? So I explained that to him. Right? So that's the answer lah. Right? So when it comes to obedience to husband, on 3 aspects, he has rights on 3 things: house, children, him. Right? So that's why when it comes to leaving the house, the leaving the house thing is actually his right. It falls under his right. Right? That he does not want his wife to be out there. That kind of thing is his right. Right? So number 7, posing questions to gauge a person's intelligence and knowledge. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to question his Sahaba radiallahu anhum regarding particular matters despite his knowing the answer. He used to question them to stimulate their intelligence and arouse their minds, and would impart knowledge to them in the form of a deliberation in order to gauge the knowledge they possessed. Alright, so this section, right, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, to gauge the knowledge of students. Right, usually something that we will do when we first meet students. I don't know what they can actually understand or what they are able to grasp. Right, so you ask questions to see what they're able to grasp. It's a very, very effective method, right? So that you can, you can gauge where they are with you and how fast you should actually move, right? So he says here, and of course, when you see the teaching method of Rasulullah, while he does use images and words and images, right, a lot of it is actually verbal, right? Verbal teaching and verbal testing, right? Because verbal means memorized. Right? So even with these kids, I go verbal sometimes. I will not write down anything. I go verbal sometimes because verbal means memorized. So when it comes to memorizing, because language, a lot of it has to be at your fingertips. Right? Memorized. A lot of things in language is memorized. Right? That's when you can speak and understand language well. It's all memorized. Right? Memorization of vocabulary, memorization of structure, grammatical structure, it's all memorization, right? Or customization, right, to the language. So for them, sometimes I don't draw anything, right? But I sit there and I just do verbal, right, to see how much they grasp, and also how they can answer me by just picking out from their own minds, picking out the answer from their own minds. Alright, hadith number 52. Rawal Bukhari wa Muslim an Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhuma qal bayna nahnu 'inda an-nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam julusun إذ أتي بجمار نخلة فقال وهو يأكله إن من الشجر شجرة خضراء لما بركتها كبركة المسلم لا يسقط ورقها ولا يتحات وتؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها وإنها مثل المسلم فحدثوني ما هي. So he's beginning with a riddle. He's asking the Sahaba a riddle. قال عبد الله فوقع الناس في شجر البوادي فقال القوم هي شجرة كذا ووقع في نفسي أنها نخلة فجعلت أريد أن أقولها فإذا أسنان القوم فأهاب أن أتكلم وأنا غلام شاب ثم التفت فإذا أنا عشر أنا أحدثهم أصغر القوم ورأيت أبا بكر وعمر لا يتكلمان فسكت فلما لم يتكلما قالوا حدثنا ما هي يا رسول الله قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هي النخلة فلما قمنا قلت لعمر أبي والله يا أبتاه لقد كان وقع في نفسي أنها نخلة فقال ما منعك أن تقولها قلت لم أركم تتكلمون لم أرك ولا أبا بكر تكلمتما وأنا غلام شاب فاستحييت فكرهت أن أتكلم أو أقول شيئا فسكت قال عمر لأن تكون قلتها أحب إلي من أن يكون لي كذا وكذا. Right, so here's a riddle that Rasul asked the Sahaba once. Right, from Bukhari and Muslim, narrated on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar who said, we were sitting in the company of Rasul when a palm core was brought to him. Right, so a palm core is an edible tuber growing at the upper end of the palm trunk. Right, was brought to him. While eating it, right, he said, from among the many trees, there is a green tree whose goodness and benefits are like those of a Muslim. Its leaves do not fall or do they scatter about. It produces its fruit at its appointed time by the permission of its sustainer, and it is similar to the Muslim. Tell me what that tree is. Right, so first he brings it with a riddle. It's a green tree, the leaves don't fall off, right? It doesn't shed its leaves, meaning that there's no shedding of leaves for it, right? It gives its fruit, in seasons, right, by the permission of its sustainer. Right, so this tree is similar to a believer, right? So here, right, the story actually goes in Abdullah bin Umar. He actually knew the answer, right, but he was too shy to say because the big Sahaba were around, right? So he kept it to himself. But thereafter, when he told his father that I knew what it was, then the father, Sayyidina Umar, said, it would have been more beloved to me that you had spoken up and said the answer. Then he kept quiet, right? So that was the answer, that it was actually the palm tree, the date palm, right? So the Shaykh says here, there are several reasons for the comparison between date palm and the Muslim, right? So he actually gave the answer date palm, right? The Muslim is a date palm. It is regarded as the best and highest of trees in rank, the date palm, and because it is very hardy, right? It doesn't die easily, right? And it produces fruits that can last for very long, right? There is abundant goodness in it. It provides shade all the time, and because it hardly sheds its leaves, it produces wholesome fruit, and the dates have completely all the vitamins that is needed by a human being, and in fact, human beings can live entirely on dates and nothing else. We can actually live entirely on dates. We don't need anything else. This entire thing about the food pyramid, all that is all nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Right? Because human beings of the past, right, they used to just eat one type of food. Right? They eat grain. They used to eat grain. They used to eat, so they don't actually have like this 4 types of foods every day and every meal. I don't have that. In fact, meat for them is very rare, because you kill an entire animal to have meat. Right, so for them, they will actually just eat grain or fruit sometimes. Fruits will be a delicacy for them, right? So dates actually hold the most benefit, right? So its fruit is perennial, right? So the fruit from the time it bears fruit, these are eaten in different forms until new dates appear, which are then harvested. Right? So dates can be kept throughout the year. Right? There is no end to the keeping of dates. It can be kept throughout the year. Right? When the date palm dries, it provides numerous benefits. Right? Its wood, leaves, and branches are used for stumps, firewood, staffs, batons, ropes, and utensils. Even its dead pits are used as fodder for camels. As for its beautiful growth and leaves, its beautiful shape and fruit is lofty and soaring height. Its evergreen leaves, its firm roots which prevent the winds and storms from uprooting it, and its generous shadow and shade. These are the obvious benefits and the many well-known and praiseworthy advantages for those living in the Arabian Peninsula. Right? So there's so much goodness from the date palm. Right? That is why the dates are like the Muslim. The Muslim gives its benefit at all times, even when the date palm dies. Right? So when the Muslim dies, his benefit continues thereafter. Right? Right, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised this tree greatly in several verses of the Quran. Similarly, a Muslim or believer is an embodiment of goodness and benefit. His blessings encompass all situations. His benefits are perpetual in his favor and in favor of others after his death. He does good deeds, speaks good, engages in various types of obedience by way of fasting, performing prayer, reciting the Quran, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reminding others of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving in charity, commanding good and prohibiting evil. Right? He intermingles with people. He exercises patience over their transgressions against him. He is loving and attracts people towards him. He benefits people without causing them any harm. He is beautiful in his conduct and speech. His noble characteristics are of benefit to others. He gives and does not refuse. He gives preference to others and is not covetous. And the passage of days only increase him in his aloofness and detachment from the world. That means you get higher and higher, right? It gets higher and higher away from the dunya. Right? Hardship and afflictions only serve to make him more firm and steadfast on the truth, as how the date palm is firm on the ground, right? Even with the winds and the rain. He hastens towards goodness and beneficial ventures and eradicates ignoble and reprehensible traits. His deeds are accepted and liked by his sinner. If you sit in his company, he will benefit you. If you partner with him, he will benefit you. If you accompany him, he will benefit you. If you ask him advice, he will benefit you. There is benefit in every facet of his affairs. Whatever knowledge emanates from him is a source of nourishment for souls and hearts. He is enshrouded and encompassed by his Islam. He is never devoid of the clothing of piety. His good deeds do not stop whether he is in a state of affluence or poverty, health or illness. In fact, his good deeds do not even end after his death. Right? He views his life for the benefit of his hereafter. He says benefit from today for tomorrow. Benefit is derived from everything that emanates from him, whether he is alive or dead. The reason for this is that the basis of his deeds and actions are in belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and benefiting the instruments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Glory be to Allah, how great a believer is. Right, so the date palm has a similar way. Right, so everything about the date palm is benefit. Right, this is how the believer is completely beneficial. Right, so you see how Rasulullah begins with a riddle, right? And he does ask riddles every now and then in the entire in the seerah, like in the life of Rasulullah, he will ask riddles. Right, so the Sahaba will remember forever. Right, so then here he says, Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu says, the people began thinking about different trees in the forest. Right, some said it's such and such a tree. Others said it's such and such a tree. It occurred to me that it is a date palm. I wanted to say this to Rasulullah, but when I looked at the seniority of the people and my own young age, I became scared to say anything. When I looked at myself, I saw myself merely 10 years old, the youngest and smallest of all those who were present. He was only 10 years old, Sayyidina Ibn Umar. Right? He's a very young boy when he entered into Islam. Right? When I looked around me, I saw Abu Bakr and Umar sitting silently. So I also remained silent. Right? The big Sahaba are quiet, so I keep quiet. Right? So then these two, Abu Bakr and Umar, did not speak. The people said, tell us what a tree is, Ya Rasulullah. And Rasulullah said it is a date palm. When he stood up from there, he said to his father, he's walking away with his father. He said to his father, who is Omar, "O father, I take an oath by Allah. It occurred to me that it was date palm." And Sayyidina Omar said, what prevented you from giving the answer? Why didn't you say the answer? And he said, I saw all of you remaining silent, you and Abu Bakr not speaking, and I'm a young boy, and I felt shy and didn't want to say anything or speak anything. So I remained silent. Sayyidina Omar said, had you given the answer, it would have been far more beloved to me than having such and such a thing. Right? That means like it's the most beloved thing if you have to say the answer. Right? It's like a father like wanting his son to answer correctly. Right? The question. Right? It's not like boasting or anything, but it's more of like your son knew the answer. Right? Answer the question from Rasulullah alaihi wasallam. Right? There are many lessons from this hadith, right? But I don't want to rush through it. Right? So we'll go take it the next time round lah. I will stop there for today. Right? Inshallah. It's one of the most beautiful hadiths from Rasulullah in his teaching. Right? When he asks riddles. Right? He actually asks riddles to those who are around. Right. Okay, stop there. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. الفاتحة أن الله يرزقنا علما نافعا والخاتم المستعين بدل الهدى والوصول بقبل النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم وإلى أرواح معالمنا ومشايخنا وذوي الحقوق علينا وإلى حضرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal asr. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Yes. So he can take his wife's help, assistance in teaching the children education, but when it comes to, for example, when it comes to the education of the children and their decisions on that, right? At the end of the day, it is his say. It is still his say, right? So even though the wife believes in the different type of education, right, it's still his say because he's the head of the family, and of course he'll be taken into account lah, right? So if she really wants, and she's an educated person, then she needs to put forth her points logically, and discuss. Don't argue, but discuss with him. And at the end of the day, it is his decision, like what he wants to do, right? Like for us, my mom wanted to put both of her girls in madrasah. Actually, me and my sister should put us in madrasah. My father was not a pro madrasah education back then lah. That is. So my mother had no choice lah. But sincerely, like obedience to the husband, right? So, but she wanted to put her daughters in madrasah from the beginning. She really wanted to, because my auntie also, her auntie put her kids all in madrasah. So my mom really wanted to put us in madrasah. And my father was disagreeable, right? So even same thing like homeschooling, right? If the wife is really much onto homeschooling, and the husband is not, right? Then again on the husband, right? So the husband put them in school lah, right? But if she wants to really do something, then she must really bring forth her argument well lah. And even then, she needs to reda if he still refuses. Right? So for me, before I got married, this is one of the things that I actually asked my husband before I agreed to marry him. Right? Of course, this is what happens when you're looking for marriage and you're thinking about children. Right? So you're looking for a spouse is more on you're looking at a father. Yeah. So for me, I ask questions not for myself. I didn't ask him about what I wanted and what I prefer and whatsoever. No, I actually asked him about a lot about children. So I asked him, what was your views on education? And I asked specifically to him. I asked him, what do you think about homeschooling? And what do you think about madrasah schooling? What do you think about secular schooling? All the methods. What do you think about kindergarten, going to kindergarten or going to preschool? What do you think about making them memorize Quran when they are very young? What do you think? So I asked him every question about bringing up children. I even asked him about medication. What do you think about doctor's medication? What do you think about homeopathy? What do you think about other methods or Chinese medicine? Or I asked him all of these things. I asked him everything. Because when it comes to yourself, you can choose what you want to do. And when it comes to the children, right, you want to make sure you're on the same page. So myself and my husband, we are on the same page about almost everything. But that is not coincidental. Right, that is actually was checked before marriage. I checked it specifically because I know that I have to obey him. Yeah. So I checked to see if his ideas they are in line with mine. Right, so to the point of vaccinations, to the point I ask everything. Right, what are his ideas, so that I won't so that I don't have to actually argue with him thereafter.